Welcome back in. Welcome back in. Today, we're going to be discussing some of my favorite running back sleepers you should be looking to target in your upcoming fantasy drafts. I think the ones that everybody's kind of talked about that I'm not really going to hit on that much is guys like Zach Charbonnet, Samaje Perine, Tyler Algier, Jarek McKinnon. Are all players that are being drafted, in the later rounds that I think, you're going to hear from everybody. So I want to hit on a few different players other than that. Now, first thing I do want to start off, I think Jaylen Warren, Kenny Gainwell, and Tank Bigsby are all fine late round targets for anybody. Jaylen Warren has looked fantastic again so far. I mean, he just busted off a long touchdown run in the last preseason game, which got a lot of people hyped about him. There's been a lot of talk about him being more talented than Najee Harris, and he's better than Najee Harris. Like, I think he's definitely more explosive than Najee Harris. I think he brings something different to the table than Najee Harris. But let's not get it twisted. Najee Harris is still going to be the lead back here in this backfield. But I still think Jaylen Warren can provide some standalone value, and that's really what we should be looking for. So I do like targeting Jaylen Warren. I think he's a very fine option in the later rounds. I think he should be going higher than what he is. Some of the running backs that were going ahead of him, he's kind of jumped up since this past weekend. He's kind of been a big mover because of preseason, which we already knew he was super efficient and explosive. So Tank Bigsby has looked really good so far in the preseason. I think he is going to have a role in this Jaguars offense. As much as I like Travis Etienne, I still think Tank Bigsby is going to have a role. I think they want to have a committee approach here. And so I do think Tank Bigsby at RB50 makes a lot of sense. And then Kenny Gainwell, I think he's fine to take a shot at, but I think there's a little bit of overhype with Kenneth Gainwell about some reports that he was going to be the lead back. I mean, you still have Rashad Penny here. You still have DeAndre Swift. Like, this is a very crowded backfield and one that I'm not really all that excited about unless a couple injuries happen here. So with that being said, let's get into some of the other guys that I really want to get into. And Antonio Gibson, I talked about him in the last video. I'm going to talk about him again. He really hasn't went up all that much, 108th overall. RB38 on this offense. Now, between him and Brian Robinson, I much prefer Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson is going to be the one that gets the high value touches. I think he's going to get I think he's going to get some goal line work, but he's definitely going to be involved in the passing game. Last year, he handled 43% of the opportunities. He was 12th in targets, 546 rushing yards, 353 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns, and 11.1 fantasy points per game. And considering you're able to get him as an RB4, I'm about that life. He was 11th in target share, 9th in yards per route run, and J.D. McKissic is gone, and he played in 8 games last year and saw 40 targets over that span. And, we saw Washington last year target the running backs in the 4th highest rate in the league. And so you have Eric Bieniemy coming over here from the Kansas City Chiefs. And, as we know, the Chiefs love to throw the football. And so I do think Antonio Gibson is set up to be a really, really good option in PPR format. So, and I don't think it's crazy to think that he could take over this backfield entirely because Brian Robinson was not very good last year. I mean, he was really bad as a running back last year. So it's possible over the second half of the season, they just give this, the backfield back to Antonio Gibson. Let's keep moving. Let's talk about Devon Achane, RB41, 128th overall. He did suffer an injury this past weekend, but it sounds like it's minor, more of a week-to-week thing. He escaped serious injury. I know he left on a cart, so of course, that got everybody all worried, but it sounds like he's going to be perfectly fine. One thing we do have to remember with him, he's never going to be a feature back. He's 5'9", 188. He did run a 4.32 40, so there's a lot of explosion there, a lot of speed. Some people have comped him to kind of like Warwick Dunn, which I don't think is crazy, considering they're pretty much similar in sizes and kind of the way their games are built. But I will say this: at Texas A&M, he still was really good as a runner. He was 34th in yards after contact per attempt. He was 21st, carries 15 plus yards. I think if you look at him, he has terrific contact balance for his size. He's very sharp in and out of his cuts, and obviously has speed for days. But, the cons with him is always going to be the size. He doesn't really have that prototypical size. He's never going to be a 3-down feature back. But I think he's somebody that can be utilized heavily in the passing game, somebody that get out in space, get the ball in his hands. I think that's where he carves out a role. And really past Tyreek and Jalen Waddle, there's nobody else here in this Miami backfield. I know the rumors are already started with Jonathan Taylor, who requested a trade. Now the Colts are going to grant him that trade that, the Dolphins would be interested in acquiring him. We'll see if anything happens there. But as things stand, I think in this backfield, I think Devon Achane is a really awesome pick as in PPR formats, again, as somebody that's a pass catching running back. Let's keep it moving here. Let's talk about Roshan Johnson. But he's in a full-on committee with Khalil Herbert and Deonta Foreman. But Johnson continues to work with the ones through training camp. He's a capable 3-down workhorse back. Obviously he ran behind Bijan Robinson at the University of Texas, but he was still really good in the limited opportunities that he had. He is 6 foot 220. He had 93 carries, 554 rushing yards, 6 touchdowns, and 14 catches for 128 receiving yards last season at Texas. But he was 39th in yards per route run, and his 45% missed tackle force rate led all running backs the last 2 seasons in college football. Obviously, this dude is a tackle breaking machine. If you've watched any of them through preseason, you see exactly why the Bears love this guy so much. And he's going so late. I think he's a perfectly fine option to target in drafts. Like, yes, I like Khalil Herbert. I think Khalil Herbert is a very good running back in his own right, but they have no allegiance to Khalil Herbert. They drafted Roshan Johnson here, and they also brought in Deontay. I don't really care about one way or the other. I think this is going to end up being a situation where if Khalil Herbert tends to struggle at all, I think Roshan Johnson could take over. I think he could play this David Montgomery type role, and maybe Khalil Herbert ends up being second fiddle here, and is kind of more of a change of pace option here, as the season progresses. So I love taking a shot on Roshan Johnson. I want to come away in every single draft that I do with Roshan Johnson. I think the upside is certainly there, and I think he could be a league winner down the stretch. So, lastly, let's talk about Tai Chandler, RB 70, 220th overall. He is 5'11, 204 pounds. I don't think he really has the size to be a prototypical, kind of workhorse type back, but I definitely think that he's gonna mix in here in this offense. And for the Minnesota Vikings, it's kind of been a battle for the RB2 between him and Dwayne McBride. And from all accounts, sounds like Ty Chandler has the lead on this. And I think it's possible that if Alexander Madison does struggle and isn't the guy that they think that he is, I think it's possible you could see Ty Chandler really work in and get opportunities here. At the very least, I think he could have be a usable option. Maybe he's a flex option, in PPR format, utilize as a pass catcher. You really look his 4.38 speed. I've seen a lot of comps to Tevin Coleman, and I don't hate that comp for him. That's kind of what he is, a really straight line guy. He doesn't have incredible agility or anything like that, but certainly straight line speed is certainly there for him. And so Ty Chandler could be a really interesting late round guy you kind of take a flyer on to see what happens, or at the very least, I think he's somebody you should be monitoring and to see what happens after week one to see, how this is all going to play out with this Minnesota Vikings backfield. Lastly, the last couple of guys that I just kind of honorable mentions. I don't think these are guys you necessarily have to draft, but I certainly think I would keep on my radar, and that's Chase Brown from the Cincinnati Bengals. Listen, we saw it last year. I mean, they did not make Joe Mixon a true workhorse. I mean, Samaje Perine certainly mixed in and got opportunities, and Samaje Perine is now gone. And I think Chase Brown could end up being that guy. RB 65, 245th overall. I've heard a lot of people talk about Travion Williams. Travion Williams has been there for years, right? Like, I mean, this isn't something that this is some undrafted rookie or something like that that's kind of come out of nowhere. Like, he's been on this roster for a long time and has done absolutely nothing and been given really no opportunities to do anything. So I do think Chase Brown is a guy that I would look to target. Super explosive athlete out of Illinois, really productive year over year. Chase Brown is certainly a capable runner, and I think this could be something to monitor here, especially if something were to happen to Joe Mixon, or if they're just looking for somebody that is going to give him a breather. I think Chase Brown could be that guy. Jerome Ford is the other guy. He's week to week with the Cleveland Browns, and he has been talked about as being the pass catching option here in this offense. Possible he could get like a Kareem Hunt type role, or maybe he just sees 3 or 4 targets a game, maybe gets 5 or 6 carries a game, and somebody that could have some standalone value as the season goes on. So Jerome Ford is the other guy, RB 67, 251st overall, that I'd be looking to take a shot on. A couple other names, Keontae Ingram, I think is interesting for the Arizona Cardinals. James Conner is somebody that's always had trouble with injuries. Kyron Williams, I think, is certainly somebody we should be taking a look at. He was somebody that the Rams were really high on as a pass catching option. I think could happen this year because Cam Akers isn't necessarily a great pass catcher, or they've never really trusted him to be that. And if they were looking for a third down back, I think Kyron Williams could be that guy, somebody that nobody's talking about, that once the season starts, all of a sudden he plays 35% of the snap. I think it's certainly a range of possibilities here for Kyron Williams. So those are all to be the guys that I'd be looking to target. That being said, let me know in the comment section below, what are your thoughts about some of these guys, or who's somebody that I didn't mention that you're really excited about as a running back sleeper this year? Let me know in the comment section below. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.